You're tuned to Mountain States Policy Center. In the fight for limited government, conservative free market solutions and ideas that work for everyone. We take a back seat to no one. It's time for Peak Policy from Mountain States Policy Center.
Well, hello again, everybody. I'm Chris Cargill, the President and CEO of Mountain States Policy Center, and welcome to the program. Thanks very much for joining us. It is a beautiful yet snowy day throughout the Mountain States, so we appreciate your being here to talk a little bit about what's going on in the legislative session. We'll have a great discussion with Representative Jordan Redman coming up in just a couple of minutes. Just a couple of quick details. If you're unfamiliar with what Mountain States Policy Center is all about, we're a free market think tank. So if you've heard of groups like the Heritage Foundation or the Brookings Institute or the American Enterprise Institute, those are national think tanks. We're a think tank on a statewide level, or I suppose you could call it on a regional level, as we cover the Mountain States. And we're based here in Idaho, but cover all sorts of policy issues that are going on throughout the Mountain States and are happy to do so. If you are not already on our mailing list, I would tell you to go to mountainstatespolicy.org, get signed up to get on our email list. That way you'll get all of our research and recommendations sent to you via email. We're not going to spam you, but we do want you to be able to keep in touch with what's going on, not only at our organization, but also in the state legislatures and policy-wise throughout the Mountain States. So again, go to mountainstatespolicy.org, get signed up for our email list. Today, we have the great opportunity to talk to one of the new incoming members of the Idaho State Legislature, Representative Jordan Redman, who represents the 3rd District, which is up in the Coeur d'Alene area. And he has been participating this past week in a lot of stuff that's going on at the Capitol and new member orientation. So, Jordan, thanks very much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks very much for having me, man. Appreciate your time.
Well, it's a great privilege, and one of the things that I think that's the most interesting about this upcoming legislative session, and tell me if you agree, is the number of new representatives and senators that there will be. So tell the viewers what's been going on down in Boise this past week.
So we're down here for orientation this whole week, and you're exactly right. There's a lot of new members in both bodies. So a lot of it is kind of understanding the process, understanding how we're going to get through this session, and it's been very, very informative. I'm actually in the Capitol right now.
And you were just telling me that you don't have an office yet, so you're kind of office hopping to see if you can find a place, but we appreciate you being able to track one down. Before we kind of get into a policy discussion, tell me about your impression of think tanks, the role that we will play in helping you as legislators get information that you need and guide your policy decisions.
I think it's extremely important to have different think tanks and different advisors that you can reach out to on different topics. Obviously in Idaho, we don't have a staff or anything like that. So, it's going to be really difficult to be able to cover all the topics and go through all the different things that come across our desks. So it'll be really vital to have folks like you that can help with research and help us understand the issues a little better.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that has been a consistent theme, I think, that's been brought up by legislators across the state, is that, look, we don't have a huge staff or anything that's going to be able to come in and say, hey, here's the research on this, here's the research on that. Mountain States Policy Center will play a critical role in helping you hopefully get that information that you need. Okay, so let's look ahead to the legislative session. And I suppose we can kind of look back a little bit as well, because these things are tied together, obviously, with what happened in the special session, the extraordinary session that happened in September, and then what's going to be happening in the upcoming session here in just a few weeks down in Boise. Tell me, first of all, your impressions of what happened during the special session, tax cuts, flattening of the income tax, education funding. Did it accomplish what you wanted to accomplish?
I don't know. I think there was some real benefits in that. unfortunately, I don't necessarily think it should have been called into a special session. I think a lot of that could have been handled with this group. I think the reason for that was it is such a new group coming in. I think they knew they could get some of that stuff accomplished without having to work through this new group. And I think that probably went around the correct process. But I think it was probably a strategic play to avoid the ballot initiative.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. I mean, $400 million more to education spending in the state. Now you and other legislators get to decide what to do with that education dollar amount, that $410 million amount. Have you had any thoughts about what you'd like to see?
I think something that we are going to see, and I think many folks in these bodies want to see, is some school choice options. I think there's several different ways to go about that, but I think that would be a really wise use of some of those funds, as well as I think our state needs to see that. I think our constituency wants that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to be releasing the Idaho poll next week that actually shows a little bit more detail about what the citizens would like to see when it comes to education freedom options for parents and trying to get those options in place for kids. As we've seen, Arizona has done this. Other states have done this as well. It's not that complicated. It might be an Idaho specific solution, which is fine. But still, having more options for parents, I think, is paramount. What about the tax side, Jordan? As you know, $1.5 billion is what you guys are going to have to work with in terms of extra tax revenue. One of the things we're going to be suggesting, as you and I have talked about, is trying to tie the income tax to revenue growth. Do you think that there's room to lower that income tax even more than they've already lowered it?
Absolutely. And I think there's probably some other structures that could be looked at as well. I definitely agree that, we could lower that income tax, but maybe there's some other structures we could look at to avoid some of those taxes. Idaho is a very conservative place. Sorry, people are waving. And I think that, with that, we should have a little more conservative tax structure.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any specific tax that you pay closest attention to that you look at and say, geez, that's the one, if I had to choose, that's the one I would lower or get rid of?
I think income tax is probably the biggest one. I think if you set a flat tax, I think there's a lot of validity to that. But at this point, I'd look at several different options.
We're talking with Representative Jordan Redman of the 3rd Legislative District, the Coeur d'Alene area, one of the new members that's going to be coming into the Idaho State Legislature. Representative Redman, what are you looking forward to the most? And then maybe on the flip side of that, what are you, I guess, not scared about? Scared is the wrong word, but what are the challenges that you see on the horizon for the next few months in this legislative session?
Honestly, really looking forward to the service aspect of this job. I do think it will be an extreme honor to be able to represent the state of Idaho and District 3. I think there's going to be a lot of things that we can do to really benefit the state and just help the state out, which is incredible and a great honor. Probably the biggest challenge that we're going to see is going to be the learning curve, again, with such new bodies. I think, making sure we can move through work, get through the business as quick as possible, and be efficient. I think that's going to be a little bit of an issue. And I do think, obviously, also with the new group coming in, we're going to see a lot of stuff maybe that didn't get hearings or get passed in the past. And so looking back at those things and making sure we're making wise decisions will also be a challenge.
Before we let you go, Representative Jordan Redman of the 3rd Legislative District in the Coeur d'Alene area, is there anything that's out there that you think is underreported that you're hearing about that you think, oh, this is going to be a big deal coming up in this next legislative session?
I think the biggest thing we're going to see is, again, tax structure and school choice. Those are really the hot topics and being spoke about now. There's a lot of other smaller issues that are still, issues that we need to address. But dealing with regulation, lowering some of that regulatory bodies in this state. So it's going to be a fun one.
And you were telling me before we signed on today, it's like drinking from a fire hose. So
it is.
Good luck to you, Representative Redman. Thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it. We will see you up in the Coeur d'Alene area, I'm sure, soon, and travel safe.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chris.
All right. We appreciate Representative Redman being here, and we are going to take a short break. And when we come back, we'll talk about our annual event coming up in Coeur d'Alene in just a few months. So stay with us.
Tired of what it's costing to fill up your gas tank? Who should you blame? A large portion of the cost you pay per gallon goes to the government. In fact, it can be 20 to 30% of the overall cost, but you'd never know. That's because the gas tax is hidden in the price of the product. Virtually nothing else we buy has the tax hidden, so why should gas? What we need is gas tax transparency, such as stickers placed on pumps to inform everyone how much they're paying to the government. Learn more at mountainstatespolicy.org.
And welcome back to Peak Policy here at Mountain States Policy Center. Again, want to thank Representative Jordan Redman for being with us. He is one of the many new members that are in the legislative session this year down in Idaho, down in Boise, I should say. And we're excited to be able to work with him and offer some information and research on public policy issues that are going on. Just a couple of quick reminders. We're going to be releasing the Idaho poll, and we will have a luncheon going on in Boise next week on December 13th, Tuesday, December 13th. So go to mountainstatespolicy.org and get registered for that event. We'll also have a panel of legislators who will be talking about the upcoming legislative session. And then one of the items that we talked about as well that we've been talking about is our spring dinner, which is coming up on April 28th, 7 p.m. at the Coeur d'Alene Inn. Former Congressman Trey Gowdy will be our keynote speaker for that event. And then, as I've mentioned, we will be doing a similar event in Boise in October every year. Don't have the keynote speaker set for that event just yet, but if you get signed up for the Coeur d'Alene event, you'll be one of the first to know about the Boise event as well. So again, Friday, April 28th of next year, go to mountainstatespolicy.org to get registered to join us in Coeur d'Alene for our spring dinner. Again, thank you to Representative Jordan Redman. Thank you for watching Mountain States Policy's Peak Policy program. A lot of P's there. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for watching Mountain States Policy Center. To stay up to date on the work of MSPC, visit mountainstatespolicy.org or find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Mountain States Policy Center. Free markets first.